Savage Truth presents live from the King's War Chariot, somewhere outside of time, from the dimension of the impossible being possible, the mysterious realm where dreams are formed and destinies are birthed, standing on the edge of eternity where truth and faith merge, calling out, wake up.
Seeking truth.
Seeking truth.
Dismantling lies.
Dismantling lies.
It's time.
Time to unpod. Yeah, we're going to start with Ninja Turtles and then with the Millennial Reign past theory. We're going to be examining a bunch of encoded stories from history that probably never happened that all have a common weird thread. Briefly, starting off with the Ninja Turtles, what does that have to do with four Renaissance geniuses that were probably superhuman or didn't exist or were angels during the past Millennial Reign, like I said before? And also, what does this have to do with another quartet of four scientists, seemingly with amazing inventions coming out of nowhere? All coming up next. Let's start off looking at their names. Michelangelo literally means Michael the Angel. It's not just Michael, it's Michelangelo. Kind of a weird name for a human, who also as his weapon is carrying a chain, and Michelangelo in the Bible chains Lucifer and casts him to the pit. Also, Raphael, which is Michelangelo's buddy, is another archangel. Raphael, the angel of healing. Again, you see the L. Raphael, which means healer of God. Michelangelo, which means who is like God. Donatello, again with the L, which means gift from God. And then the other one, Leonardo, you see Leo, again with the backwards L in there. Leo is the lion. And the lion, who was a gift from God, who is like God and is a healer from God. Kind of a little weird name code with the Ninja Turtles. Weapons, the sword of the spirit coming out of the lion, Leo's mouth, like it says in Revelation. Donatello has the staff like Moses. Raphael, the healer, has the shin-shaped sai, try saying that one, which is said to heal people, the blessing from number 6, and the chain I told you about. I know you're thinking this is a stretch, but this is about to go somewhere, and you know, they're supposedly named after Renaissance people, which is where the real mystery begins and gets even more fascinating. But also you see the Ninja Turtles going through manhole portals into the underworld, which is kind of the same as the Mario tunnel portals. Mario, also a carpenter, defeating a dragon in the underworld to save a bride and restore a kingdom. Sounds a lot like the Christian story. And also, Mario eating the weird mushroom, the Amanita muscaria, which has the weird ties to Jesus, which I've covered before. Probably a coincidence. The colors of the Ninja Turtles, the blue, red, and purple, are the tabernacles, and the other one, orange, which would be bronze like the cherubim, or fiery, judgment like the fire always associated with God and his presence. The cherubim, which are the four living creatures. Michelangelo, always aerial, doing aerial moves on the skateboard like the eagle. Raphael, headstrong, always charging in like the bull. Gabriel, Donatello, the man, always figuring stuff out with his head and not really doing anything cool, so that's the man. And then Leonardo, again, the lion, which we covered before, which would be the other foreside of the cherubim. Speaking of the teenage mutant saints, how about the dog-headed Saint Christopher that I've already told you about in my videos? This is all starting to tie in now to the post-millennial reign theory. People and encoded or fake historical accounts, like I said, literally named Michael the Archangel. Let's examine these weird Renaissance backstories. Michael the Archangel, with amazing artwork that no normal human could do, who also did King David, the Sistine Chapel, and again, all sorts of Christian-themed angelic artwork. Raphael, literally, if you look him up, is associated with revival, with works that honor Jesus, his birth, the transfiguration, etc., through poems and artwork. Kind of sounds like a starseed or an angel. Leonardo da Vinci, super genius artist and scientist and inventor, How do people learn this level of mastery? Where does all the time for this come from during this time? It sounds like a different world. and they still have to survive and live and everything else. And they're mastering all these different levels of subjects. Also, there's this fascinating mystery I've covered before where he disappeared, again, portals. He disappeared for 2 years in a cave and came back with inventions and technology. Donatello, a sculptor, invented new techniques never seen before, also sculpting King David, the Apostle John, the Ascension of Christ, keys to Peter. All this free creative thinking in the past known as Renaissance. Some people even tied in with Dark Ages and other time mysteries. In a future millennial reign deep dive, well, I'll be giving some pros and cons of what I really think about that theory. But were they really here on Earth during the millennial reign? Were these angels disguised as Renaissance stories and coded in with weird Ninja Turtle patterns? Were they here on Earth for the millennial reign? Again, this is not a teaching, but weird patterns that are just going to start getting deeper. Encoded works of history stories from the past, like Shakespeare. Shakespeare's name was an anagram. There's a lot of controversy about who Shakespeare really is, or was it a group of people, and what are their writings really encoding? Certain bard societies, lots of other stuff we can get into. Also, Jules Verne, another encoded historical, fictional, but probably not fictional with some of the stuff, accounts of a person. Another quartet of people, Newton, Franklin, Edison, and Einstein that you see in the Back to the Future movies. Another quartet, these four scientists. Really weird backstories, with Newton, the apple in the tree, leading to gravity. Franklin, the kite and the key, which are sigil metaphors, by the way, and then gets electricity. Were these stories real? Did any of them even happen? Newton invented calculus in his 20s, said to be the son of a farmer, linked to alchemy and rockets, the Philosopher's Stone, and even seeking immortality. Edison inventing incandescent light, cameras, video cameras, and telephones. Pretty much sounds like the smartphone predecessor technology, which would all be rolled into one. Einstein, known for inventions and equations, math and physics, knowledge and time in these past eras are all mysteries. Where did they all come from? How do these people know this stuff? Also, in general, the people in the 1800s had a much larger vocabulary, and in general would just seem to be way smarter than the dumbed down matrix automatons of today. The four Back to the Future scientists, their stories, are they codes? Did they even happen? In fact, combine all these four signs, you have a very specific alchemical recipe in this future Solomon quantum tech. If you combine the science from all four that I just mentioned, future plug, Solomon quantum tower technology. Also, Newton thought the world would end in 2060, which I might cover at some point. The apotheosis of George Washington. Have you ever looked into that? Lots of stories with George Washington having bullet holes in his coat, and even what, again, the apotheosis represents, him a deity in heaven. Were these figures totally real? Have we been given the real versions of stories? Alright, connecting this theory into old world curiosities that don't make sense. Tartaria is not Tartaria, first of all. You're talking about the difference of one landmass, which is east of the Middle East in Russia, which was a specific landmass. You can go see my Wall of Gog and Magog video on that. But also, we're referring to this whole entire worldwide grid with futuristic technology from the past that was hidden, Antiquitech, but even beyond, and even star forts and the things like that were connected into it, that people call Tartaria, but it was actually more connected to things like Atlantis, Mu, and secret societies and things like that. So, being based on ancient ley line grid, spiritual tech, and other things, these secret societies and histories that we don't know about. We could start at the very beginning of time, really, with the serpent seed and Cain. Take a look at these two verses I'm going to throw on the screen real quick. Where was Cain banished from? Now, what did God say specifically that he flooded? This raises questions. Are there still places that weren't affected by the flood, aside from underwater, inner earth ideas, and other civilizations that could be underground or some other place that aren't the face of the earth? A fascinating idea is, could the mark that God put on Cain be immortality? I don't believe it is, but there are legends, if you read about, where people were cursed with immortality, because if you think about it, that'd probably be one of the worst curses to have, to be immortal, if you really think about it. So back to the fallen angels, Nimrod, the beginning of time, moving forward. This is where you see a lot of the genetic altering happen. tying back in to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, altering genetics with reptile-like creatures. You see the same kind of themes throughout history. Also, at the beginning of time, you never thought about how the flood would be boiling mud flood, liquid kind of a flood in certain places, especially as the flood was springing up from the deep, and volcanoes possibly erupting for the first time during that flood, or during another reset, which I'll come back to in a minute. But the idea of not really ever seeing or knowing about volcanoes could erupting, and then that happens for the first time on the earth, be pretty horrifying. So from the beginning to the end, we're going to go right to the millennial reign thought experiment, which, if you don't know, there's a theory been going around about the little season. It's based off of revelation that there'll be a little season where Satan is released from the pit. This is during the 1,000-year millennial reign. Satan will be released for a certain small little season, a little period of time, to basically convince the whole world to turn on the camp of the saints, to turn on Jesus and to fight against him. So if it already happened, this is what I see. Satan get released from the pit. This will be right after all the saints would have, I guess, vanished or gone up to the north, which I'll come back to later. But he would have immediately started to try to erase evidence. This is one of the first things that he would do. And you also could see evidence of this happening all over the world. But things like all the weird asylums and all the rules, if you look at why people went into asylums, and the orphan trains all play into this. All of a sudden, you see Satan throwing people that probably remember the millennial reign and all the good things about God into the asylums, taking their kids and shipping them off into these new little conspiracy theme parks that we call cities that were founded. They were basically just found that were huge on top of layers, and they don't fit the size of humans that were today. Also, lots of things like six-fingered statues, and statues with lots of hands and feet cut off so you can't see that anymore. Old world mysteries and photos, lots of dirigibles, aerial stuff happening, early electricity, old map anomalies. These are all weird things, if you look into, I think could tie into that. But if not, it definitely ties into a thread of the truth about things being hidden, which we'll come back to what that common theme could be later. Antiquitech, old world fires and book burning, and the version of history only being told that the farm populations are allowed to be told. Hidden history. Around this time you see evolution becoming a theory, globe earth becoming a theory, which is different than what all of the ancients believed. Also, you see this 1800s reset, some sort of what people call a mud flood. Again, they call this whole worldwide empire Tartaria, but Tartaria was actually something different, but this worldwide empire was a real thing. In my opinion, it was probably based off of fallen angel technology. But you see this post-reset, war-torn dummy populace inhabiting this new stage theme park. The whole world is a stage. What we're in now, our predecessors for the past 100 and something years. Something mysterious definitely happened in the 1800s. Volcanoes, plagues of all kinds, and everything else I just talked about. Also a weird mystery from that time, you see the Cabbage Patch Kids, and you see tons of postcards and art with fields of cabbages with little babies. You also see the cherub, or cherubim, cherubs being composed looking like little babies, which we know they don't look like, and you wonder why. I think I solved a mystery where they both tie in together. If you do some etymology, you'll find that one of the words for cherub or cherubim is the same word for cabbage, which sounds pretty weird. I'm wondering if the unfolding of the cabbage has to do with the unfolding of the cherub wings. Like you see is described, sometimes they fly, their wings cover their feet and face, and the way they fold and unfold in almost a psychedelic, dimensional way, sort of looking like the cabbage. But also these babies and cherub associated with this same artwork and postcards, the same mystery. Kind of interesting. Could this also tie in with the stork baby myth origin, also from these times where babies were just being delivered by some sort of flying beings? Again, into the old world incubator babies, the weird world fairs, and all the other things that you can find lots of cool research about. One of the cool things I found that I wanted to cover was the Archangel Michael, again, the Michael sword line. This is a direct straight line from Israel, Jerusalem, directly to the North Pole, where there is tons of churches along this entire line, supposedly civilizations that didn't know about it, where churches are named after the Archangel Michael. Probably means something. Also, tying away to the civilization, this breakaway civilization of saints, of Christians, of Yeshua in the North. North Pole anomalies, whether inner Earth, things Admiral Byrd saw, or completely cloaked and we can't see, or aerial, somewhere in the sky. This population of the north, the saints, probably where Michael is flying from. Pretty interesting. Also tying into other time mysteries where it was a different world. Lots of encoded stories. It just really seems like it was a different place. Speaking of the Cabbage Patch, I've told you before about kindergarten actually does mean child garden, which could tie into the Cabbage Patch and children, and hence the Garden of Eden, this whole thing being some sort of school and a test. So back to the millennial reign exploration. So if you're looking back, what you would expect to see is, according to Revelation, a third of the world would be burned. And if you look right now, about a third of the world is desert. Also, one of the most fascinating things to me is the pseudo-Arabic Kufic script. It's like a secret millennial reign language of the saints and angels. Secret, tiny little details embedded and woven into things like armor, shields, swords, clothing. It's on churches and cathedrals, art, all over the place. Art, again, tying back into the Renaissance and these mysterious Renaissance painters like Michelangelo, encoding all of these tiny details and a possible secret language of angels, saints, or the millennial reign that we see in things. Again, back to the TMNT, millennial reign, saint angels idea. Definitely was a different world for sure. Also, you'll see that the world will travel to keep the feasts. This is obviously in the future. Things like Isaiah, the prophets, and Revelation. During the millennial reign, the nations of the world will travel to Jerusalem, to the north, and they'll pay homage to the boss, but they'll have to keep the feasts. And if you look back, aside from the Tartaria airships, there are tons of trains and tracks that just lead to the north, even things through Canada and other things that go up into the far north. Legends of the North Pole Santa and even the Polar Express really tying into this. People coming up to the north to pay homage. Again, tying into the camp of the saints, breakaway civilization, and a physical place on earth that could be cloaked. By the way, the spirit realm is physical. It is altered dimensionally, but it is physical. It's just spiritual, if that makes sense. Other fascinating mysteries to move into. In 1211, lots of children disappeared en masse in Europe with a weird backstory. Tons of disappearances. Also tied into the origins of the Pied Piper and other myths, or musical beings just playing children or populations away into the forest to disappear. Could this tie into missing 411 or other portal disappearances? Mass disappearances also tie into what people know as phoenix or reset cycles. Also, in 1211, supposedly a third of the population died. In 536, they call it the worst year ever. Tons of volcanoes, plagues, mad people died, and it just was crazy. Now, historians probably, as a cover-up, took one event. If the millennial reign happened, Armageddon, the day of the Lord, everything got destroyed, this past civilization of the beast, or even possibly antediluvian with, different trains of thought. But it would seem like that they took one mass extinction event and separated it into two or three and maybe spread the years out a little bit. We're going to wrap this up in a minute, but the Jesus verse about this generation, we'll see pretty much what he alludes to, possibly him coming back in their generation. Josephus also describes in 70 AD, when the temple was destroyed, lots of aerial phenomena and weird things happening, including horsemen in the sky. Kind of interesting. Also, there are tons of Vatican documents about all of this. Surprising amount, actually. Now, I tried to think of some objections to the millennial reign theory. The stars clearly indicate there will be 2,000 years of a church age, unless at some point they throw false stars up, which maybe. Also, the animals. I know the animals will be at peace, but when the camp of the saints go up, will they get mad again? One of those little details people don't think about, but the behavior of the animals. Also, the Bible seemed to be mass-produced in this little season, which kind of wouldn't make sense unless it was against the rules somehow. Intriguing theories, and why I like it is because it inspires thought. It really requires people to actually know what they're talking about, to dig in, do research, especially seeing what does the Bible actually say about these matters, the millennial reign, and the orders of all of these things. When are we seems to be the ultimate conspiracy in this truth-seeking matrix. And it all seems to be one commonality is hiding God's appointed times, hiding the big secret. Do all of these major conspiracies have that same common thread? Tartaria, Missing 411, Flat Earth, Millennial Reign Past. Are they all just hiding God, even with cosmology and other sorts of psyops that we've been put into? The Matrix is constantly pummeling when is it, what and how to think, and what are we in? What is the nature of the structure we're in? Connect all the dots. The elites, the watchers, the society controllers, whatever you want to call them, a group of people that we're supposed to serve, that wants us to serve them, and believe this world is way less spiritual than it is, and basically everything's just been figured out. Just go make money for them. This realm is spiritual, but not material, like what they tell you. But people are starting to wake up and remember and understand and figure all these things out. Plus, we might be waking up ancient AI, so there's that. Legends of old gods might be AI, like there's the Osiris example, being put into different pieces, and them wanting to put Osiris back together and basically try to reanimate the AI through some sort of the robotic structure. Or we could be waiting on the arrival of human aliens or underground cryptids or interdimensional spirits and all the Revelation armies that we're told about in the book of Revelation. One final food for thought with this thought experiment: if it is the past millennial reign, the lifespan will grow back to 1,000 years. Could we possibly be able to live way longer, but we don't, only because there's poison in our food and water? Or we've been made to believe this, and belief has something to do with it. Or the entire techno radiation grid that we're in, all combining to affect the lifespan that could be longer. More time mysteries in the future, or the past. Wrapping the thought experiment up in close. What to expect? A revelation timeline or a false revelation timeline? One will lead to the war of Gog and Magog, which would be if we're in the little season, and one will be the exact revelation timeline that the Bible tells you about. Either way, one thing's for sure in this Matrix: the Matrix can't be trusted, but the red letters of Yeshua always can. See you next time on The Savage Truth. In the meantime, UNPOD from the Matrix.
That's the truth. That's the truth.
Agents of the Matrix only exist to make me like them. I won't be like them. I won't be like them.
No.
Faith is what you make it, only exists to be more like him.